Hello, I'm Tom Steinberg. I'm from My Society in the UK and increasingly elsewhere. I am here because I want to explain an important connection between one particular sector and open data. A historic connection, a connection that could happen, could be more important in the future. And the reason to mention this sector is because of an enormous opportunity that has been missed in relation to it. A big kind of mistake that was made that has had a big and entirely invisible and entirely silent negative effect on open data. And I hope you'll indulge me because it's about the sector that My Society works in. Now, so what does My Society do? We run websites that are civic and democratic in nature. There is no good word to describe everything that My Society does. It gets rebranded every couple of years. Some years it's e-democracy, e-participation. There's probably a new one today, I don't know. I just talk about us as an organization that builds websites that give people simple but tangible benefits in the civic and the democratic parts of their lives. Simple benefits like, how did my politician vote? In really, really simple language. Or how do I ask the government for some information if I have never done it before and I have no experience and I don't know who to ask? How do I do that? I use a website like this. And it's a sector that stretches well beyond My Society. So this is a website called Simometer that runs here in Poland, an excellent website that covers what goes on in the Polish Parliament. And here is one from France called No Député, and both the people who run these sites are here. This is a sector that uses open data, right? You can't build sites like this without open data. But economically, this is completely insignificant, right? What's the biggest open data startup in Britain, really? Well, it's Amazon, because if Amazon didn't have a list of postal addresses and roads, they would never be able to deliver anything. So these are absolutely minute. But they have a funny characteristic, and it's a characteristic that matters to everybody here, whether or not you are in the business of building sites for democracy or accountability or transparency, which is that politicians are much more interested in these than they are in broader issues. Now, this is strange because you might think politicians should be interested or are interested in the economy or in big structural change issues or education. But when push really comes to shove, they really like looking at a list of how they voted. And it means something to them. It's like, hey, this is a site that's about me, it's a thing I can use. This site here called They Work For You in Britain, about 10% of everybody who works in Parliament uses this site once a week. And the story of open data in Britain in the last few years is inextricably connected with a few civil servants, a few politicians becoming aware that sites like this existed, becoming aware because they used them, and then through becoming aware of open data issues. Because they would get in touch and they would say, I like your website, and we would go, that's very good, it's a shame it's illegal because we're stealing all the data. How about we work together to make it not illegal to show you this page? And there was a really, really direct connection between the rise of interest in the civil service and the political classes in Britain and the fact that these sites like this existed. And I think it may well have happened in some other countries as well. Why does this matter at all, right? Well, it's because there has been, well, let's start here, okay? These are three academics from Spain, and they have written a wonderful paper which has been written, must be said, not a moment too soon. And the URL for the paper is at the bottom there. And what it's about is it looks at the European Commission, and this talk is really about the European Commission and the funding that it has provided over a decade, in I think 6 rounds, for projects like the ones I just showed you, under the name of e-participation sometimes, under the name of e-democracy sometimes. This is not, to be crystal clear here, this is not an open government, open data funding stream. It's never been about that. But the argument I just made to you is that if these projects are successful, that's one of the best ways of explaining to politicians and people like that open data matters, right? So, what's this number? This number is the average amount of money that was spent across 20 projects that the academics looked at in their study. So they didn't look at all the projects, they looked at 20 of them from the last few years, and they were 715,000 euros a piece on average, some more, some less. So that's plenty of money. If you if you ask somebody like Benjamin, who runs the French site I just showed you, he will tell you this is more than enough money to run a website like that. What's this? This is the average number of registered users on each of these sites. So, what's this? This is the average number of things those registered users did, like leaving comments or signing petitions and so on. This is an average across 20 projects. But there are more than 20 projects. There are at least 74 projects, coming to a total of 187 million euros over 10 years. This makes it, by an enormous distance, the biggest funding body that has ever existed anywhere in the world to fund the kinds of things that I just showed you at the beginning. If this is not from the academic paper, this is me taking the average cost of each user, dividing it 450 and getting a number of about 1,500 euros, dividing it by 187 million, and saying, well, across all of these projects, maybe they got about 115,000 registered users, which is not trivial in its own right, until you realise that that's about half of the peak day that the number 10 petition site did in one day once. Why kind of tell this? It's not all about big numbers. It's not all about saying our project's really enormous and your project's really small. It's also about saying that there's a slightly tragic kind of lack of impact here. There's not very many people who can point at projects and say, there's this awesome thing in my country, and everybody uses it, or people use it quite often to find out about their politicians, or to engage in their government, or to get things fixed, that was funded from this pot of cash. And it's not always just about numbers, because it can be about impact, right? So this is My Society's most recent site. This only has 1,000 problem reports on it so far, because it only launched a few weeks ago, right? But here's a problem on it. We're trying to put a seat on platform 1 at Stone Station. This happens to be the station near me, but I didn't report this. And here is a company saying, here is the train company, good news, we've been to Stone, we found a lovely spot for a nice new bench. So they're going to try and do it once they've bought one, which takes them a while. And that is the kind of impact that this sort of site can have, but only if you use open data. There's a whole ton of open data underpinning this bench, which may sound absurd, but it's the reality of what it takes. Why even stand up and tell you all of this? The waste. If more of that money had been spent on good e-participation projects, good accountability, transparency, and democracy projects, the size of the open data agenda across Europe would be unrecognisably larger than it is at the moment. There would be dozens and dozens of projects that would be well connected into government, that would be lobbying for data and succeeding and persuading politicians that don't exist at the moment. So what do we want? Well, I'm going to write an open letter to Neelie Kroes. She's the commissioner, you saw her talk yesterday. This waste was not on her watch, to be clear. She only started a year or so ago, and this is a 10-year issue. But it's time to write to her and say, it's time to reboot. This has really gone wrong, and there are a lot of people who could really benefit, not just citizens directly using services, but businesses might benefit, because you might end up in a situation where a really good e-democracy website lobbies for a data set, gets the data set, and then a business uses it, and so that's sort of good for everybody. This needs rebuilding. Why does it need rebuilding? Well, this is the kind of structure that leads to the waste at the moment. These academics, again, these lovely people, they determine that on average, a project consists of 7 partners from 4 countries, including some academic, government, and business partners, and in some cases, NGOs or organisations with e-democracy expertise were part too. This is like saying that in some cases of war, some soldiers were involved, but by and large everyone else was sort of a consultant. And this is the sort of process that we need to help them rebuild, because the European Commission, these institutions, they come from an innovation background that is all about funding jet engines and fusion research. And then you do need 7 partners in 4 countries, that's what it's all about. But we all know that some of the very best things in this world, you know, the Facebooks of this world, often, in reality, in the digital world, they get built by one person and then they expand to lots of people later on. So we need to give this kind of input and we need this kind of lesson. And so that is the main thing that we need. We need a new vision. We need the European Commission to listen to the new vision. And so my request to all of you is to say, if you care about open data, even if you don't work directly in the democracy and empowerment field, then please come and please consider signing the letter that I'm going to write to Neelie Kroes that says, let's do this better, let's get it right, let's not waste the next 180 million euros, and everybody, whether they work in this sector or other parts of benefiting from open data, will be better off. Thank you.